Good morning everybody and welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending 18th of November 2023. Suella is outcast, but her support might be vast, while in comes a Tory blast from the past, leaving many aghast. Rishi comes up with a new plan pretty fast after his Rwanda plan by the Supreme Court isn't passed. Keir's record rebellion is surpassed as hell upon Shifa is cast. Inflation below 5% at last. Focus groups and opinion polls certainly say a majority of people in the UK want the small boats full of migrants to be kept away, baying to keep them at bay from every British bay. But on Wednesday at the Supreme Court, Lord Robert Reid gave the verdict that he and 4 colleagues had agreed. The government's planned deterrent cannot succeed. Sending migrants to Rwanda cannot proceed. Offshoring the process in itself was okay. Rwanda was the problem at the end of the day. Britain can't delegate to the African state because the UN found its human rights aren't that great. The scheme had critics in every quarter, and now it seemed the flagship was dead in the water. But Sunak, maybe wanting to show he's a braver man, showed Braverman and others he had a cunning plan. To ensure there was no embarrassing defeat, he said he'd tweak a few laws and make a new treaty. A treaty to make sure Rwanda conforms with international humanitarian norms. Cue many open mouths and Suella, who just scoffed, convinced that Rishi's plane plan would never take off. She thought it was only Rishi's magical thinking that was keeping his small boat idea from sinking. Braverman by then was sniping from the sidelines after Monday's sacking that had captured the headlines. The weekend armistice violence had built up tensions, so many had already guessed Sunak's intention. The government was in need of a different direction, but who he had in mind had received not a mention. On Monday morning, when we saw entering number 10 the unexpected figure of a former PM, we wondered what the purpose of David Cameron could be. The guy hadn't even been a serving MP. But soon the penny dropped and the announcement was made. He was going to provide the government with some foreign aid. So Dave was made a lord, and most said, "Good Lord." This left field appointment had everyone floored. Appointed as Foreign Secretary out of the blue, Rishi presumably thinks he'll know just what to do. With diplomacy, gravitas and a certain kind of charm, he no doubt thinks he at least can't do any harm. And being unelected, to Rishi he's no threat, a consideration for the beleaguered PM, you can bet. So will the new Lord be lauded? Will Sunak be applauded? Did Rishi cause a massive shock? Yes, he sure did. Cameron is synonymous with the Brexit referendum. 6 years as PM, but we mostly think of that addendum. 2 election wins, but in the end he caused division, setting out the question, then not getting the decision, creating the moment when the country chose to leave. Heavy baggage from which he cannot be relieved. For decades a choice about Europe had been craved. Remainers lost the vote and will forever blame Dave. So now, for the first time since 2010, the 4 top offices of state are for men. James cleverly moved from the Foreign to Home Office. Jeremy Hunt stays in charge of the national coffers. And Rishi is still in the hot seat, which each day gets hotter. Sacking Suella has stirred more right-wing plotters. Sunak paints himself as a quiet, thoughtful fella who may well have been hurt by the words of Suella. Her resignation letter for the whole world to see clearly wasn't just about government policy. These were words of vitriol from a woman spurned, aimed at a man for whom no respect had been earned. Or perhaps she was setting out her right-leaning stall, ready for a leadership race to be called. At least on Wednesday, to ease his Braverman blues, Rishi received from the ONS some uplifting news, hitting his January target to halve inflation. 4.6% wasn't half good for the whole of the nation. But overall, this was a week when Rishi and Keir may have wanted to sit down over a beer, Sir Keir unloading his troubles and Rishi his, agreeing what tough business leadership is, keeping a party going when people are leaving, sticking to a vision while ducking and weaving. On Wednesday evening, Sir Keir received a jolting. A quarter of the Labour Party were revolting. The other 3/4 are no better, Tories quipped, while Starmer probably wished he'd made use of his whip. But it was a question of conscience that had the world gripped. Should there be a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip? Sir Keir faced the biggest backlash since taking the reins. 8 frontbenchers rebelled, but the leader remains. He's built up 3 years of credit in the bank and can ride out the show of dissent in the ranks. Keir says just pauses in Gaza are all that's needed until the IDF's mission has succeeded. It takes 2 to tango, and there is no chance Hamas will stop if Israel ends the dance. And so lives are lost in huge numbers daily as Hamas is hunted down by Israelis. Shifa hospital is where hell took place. Day and night horror unfolded on the earth's face. The world saw the premature babies and reeled, peering through fingers with hearts and minds steeled. Shifa now a word forever associated with a place where hell on earth was created. 2 peoples driven by mutual hatred, wanting each other exterminated. Until finally, one day, the killing is terminated.